I'm not sure if it was the scent of chlorine or the sound of bare feet slapping tile that brought it all back. I was at the community pool last week. My granddaughter had swim practice. And something about the light bouncing off the water triggered a memory I thought I'd buried decades ago. Isn't that how it happens? You think you've packed it all away, deep in some mental basement, and then suddenly you're 16 again, soaking wet, half naked and humiliated in front of half your high school. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name's Thomas. Tom, usually. I'm 66 now, retired after 37 years in municipal water systems. Not the kind of career people write books about, but I liked it. It was steady, logical, necessary. I was the guy who knew which valve to turn when a pipe burst in the middle of winter. I wore the same steel-toe boots for 20 years and brought the same lunch, turkey sandwich, apple, thermos of coffee, to work every day. My wife used to joke that I'd only be late to work if I was dead, and even then I'd probably clock in from the grave. Her name was Marlene. We were married for 41 years. She passed 2 summers ago, pancreatic cancer, fast and cruel. She had this laugh, kind of crooked and dry, like she didn't want to laugh but couldn't help herself. It still echoes sometimes when I'm doing dishes or putting away the groceries, like muscle memory of the soul. We had one son, Ethan, who lives upstate with his wife and the kids. He checks in once a week, usually Sunday evening, around dinner. Always says, "Hey, Pop," like it's still 1998, and I just got home from work. I don't mind. That's the closest I get to continuity these days. I live alone now, in the same house we bought in '89. Vinyl siding, 2 stories, a patchy lawn that I mow out of habit. There's a dent in the banister where Ethan crashed his toy truck when he was 5. I never fixed it. I don't even dust around it. The days are quiet. I wake up early, out of habit. I still make coffee for 2, just muscle memory. I drink both cups now, one hot, one warm. I read the paper. I walk a loop around the neighborhood. I nod at people I've known for decades but don't really talk to anymore. Everyone's moved into their own little silences. But that pool, last week, the pool, ripped the scab off something I hadn't touched in years. I was a sophomore in high school. Skinny, awkward, always pulling at the hem of my shirt. My father worked at the feed store. My mother taught 2nd grade. We weren't poor, but we weren't anything else either. Just regular, forgettable. There was a girl named Chelsea. Golden hair, dimples, that kind of cruel sweetness that teenagers carry like weapons. She was in drama club and student government. I was on the swim team, not because I was good, but because I was tall and coach said I had potential. It was late spring. The weather had finally warmed enough for outdoor practice. We were doing relays, and I remember the way the sun made the water look like glass. I was waiting on the block, shivering a little, and Chelsea was sitting with her friends on the bleachers, all legs and laughter. I heard my name. Then laughter. Then louder. "Tommy the toothpick," one of them said. Another added something about my chest, or lack of one. I stood there, frozen, until Coach barked at me to move. After practice, I found my clothes missing. Gone. No jeans, no shirt, not even socks. Just my towel and wet swim trunks. Chelsea and her friends were still there, pretending not to watch, their eyes sharp like knives. I waited in the locker room until everyone else left. Then I wrapped myself in that towel and walked across the parking lot to the school office. Every step felt like glass underfoot, and every second was its own small death. They found my clothes later, stuffed in a trash can behind the gym, soaked in something that smelled like old milk. No one was punished. No one even really said anything. Boys will be boys. Girls will be girls. You should learn to take a joke, Tommy. I told my parents I'd lost track of time, that I stayed late for extra laps. They believed me. Or maybe they just didn't ask questions they didn't want answers to. After that, something in me shifted. I stopped trying to be seen. I blended. I wore looser clothes, stopped raising my hand in class, Quit the swim team 2 weeks later without an explanation. Coach didn't ask why. I learned how to disappear before anyone could target me again. I didn't tell Marlene that story, not even after 4 decades. Not because I was ashamed, I was, but because it became the axis around which I built everything else. Quiet strength, no drama, predictability as a shield. Marlene was the first person who looked at me like I wasn't invisible. We met in a hardware store. She asked if I knew anything about caulk. I made a joke. She laughed that crooked laugh, and I was hers from that moment on. We built a life, a good one, solid. But I never quite got over the instinct to duck, to defer, to keep everything just so. I was always preparing for someone to take the rug out from under me, and when she got sick, that instinct came roaring back. The doctors didn't say much, but I recognized the look on their faces, the same one Coach gave me when I quit the team. Pity dressed up as professionalism. That's why the pool last week felt like a slap. I saw a boy, maybe 15, standing by the edge in too tight goggles, trembling. His friends were laughing. Not cruelly, but close enough. I almost said something. Almost told him it doesn't matter, that it won't define him. But that would have been a lie, because some things do define you. Not forever, maybe, but long enough to shape how you walk through the world. The letter arrived on a Wednesday, tucked among grocery flyers and a local newsletter he rarely read. Thomas almost threw it out without opening it. The handwriting on the envelope looked unfamiliar. Loose, slanted, like it had been written on a car hood. No return address, just his name in blue ink, and his house number barely legible through the lines of the pen. He stood in the kitchen holding it, the smell of old envelopes mixing with the faint citrus of the dish soap in the sink. He turned the envelope over, back again. For a second, he thought about just dropping it in the trash, but something in the weight of the paper stopped him. He slid a paring knife along the edge and unfolded the note. "Hey, Tom. Hope this finds you well. Can you believe it's been 50 years since we graduated? A few of us are organizing a little reunion next month. Nothing big, just a chance to catch up, tell lies, and see who still has hair. It'll be in the gym at Eastfield High. Hope you can make it. Would be good to see you again, man. Dave." The paper trembled slightly in his hand. Dave Mathers. They used to sit next to each other in sophomore chemistry. Dave had the thick, bullish neck of a football player, but none of the swagger. He always smelled faintly of chewing tobacco and pencil shavings. A quiet kid, reliable, probably stayed that way. Thomas read the note twice, then folded it back along its creases and set it beside the sink. He went about his day, watered the plants, fed the stray cat that had started showing up under the carport. But the letter hovered. Even as he scrubbed the sink or adjusted the thermostat, he could feel it there, a ripple in the pond. Later that night, after dinner, he walked his usual loop around the block. It was chilly for early April. His jacket collar rubbed against his neck with each step. The houses were mostly dark, save for flickers of television sets or the blue glow of kitchen fluorescents. In one front yard, a wind chime clinked softly. He thought about the gymnasium, the floors that squeaked when you turned too fast, the way the bleachers felt under you, hard and splintering through cheap slacks. He pictured the banners still hanging, curling at the edges from age. He wondered if Chelsea would be there. That name alone was enough to tighten his jaw. 50 years had passed, and he still felt it. Not the incident itself, but the way the world tilted after it. One sentence in front of too many ears. A laugh that didn't stop when he looked away. He hadn't thought of Dave in decades, but Chelsea, she had stayed in the wallpaper of his mind. Back home, he poured a glass of water and sat at the table. The kitchen was quiet. Outside, a car passed slowly, its headlights sweeping the window. He opened a drawer, pulled out a pad of paper he kept for lists and reminders, and began to write. "Hi, Dave. Thanks for the note. 50 years. Hard to believe. I'm not sure if I'll be able to make it, but I appreciate the invite." He stopped there, tapped the pen on the edge of the table. The word appreciate looked too formal. He scratched it out, rewrote the line. Thanks for thinking of me. That felt better, but still, he couldn't bring himself to say yes or no. He folded the note halfway and left it on the table. Upstairs, he stood in the doorway of the guest room. It used to be Ethan's room, long ago. The wallpaper still had faint outlines of the rockets they painted together when Ethan was 7. He had forgotten how quiet the house got after 9 p.m. You didn't notice it until you stood still. He didn't sleep much that night, not out of anxiety exactly, just a low-level hum of something unsettled. He heard the floor creak as the heater kicked in, the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Around 3, he got up, padded downstairs in socks, and looked again at the letter. The edges were curled now. He sat and stared at it. Not reading, just remembering. The cafeteria table, the sound of someone coughing 2 rows away, the way he had tried to laugh with them before realizing the joke was on him. He placed the letter back in the envelope and tucked it into a drawer. He didn't need to decide anything yet. Not tonight. Instead, he sat a while longer at the kitchen table, tracing the grain of the wood with his thumb. It was a table Marlene had picked out. She used to say it felt like an anchor. Heavy, solid, something you could build a whole life around. He pressed his palm flat against it and closed his eyes. Ethan's voice came through the line clearer than usual. Maybe he was calling from the front seat. Maybe Lily wasn't in earshot yet. Hey, Dad. We're thinking of driving down this weekend. Lily's been asking if the ducks are still there. Thomas nodded before remembering the silence of the phone. They're still here, he said. A few, at least. The pond's shallow this year. Ethan talked a bit more about weekend traffic, Lily's homework, a work thing he might need to log into during the visit. Thomas found himself agreeing to everything before the questions even ended. Yes, of course they should come. Yes, Lily could bring her bike. Yes, he'd cook breakfast. He hung up and stood in the center of the kitchen for a moment. It was early afternoon, the light flat and undecided, but he turned on the overhead anyway. Shadows skittered across the tile. Then he moved. He stripped the beds, washed the guest towels even though they were folded neatly, aired the upstairs windows. He swept the porch and replaced the batteries in the hallway thermostat, just in case. The couch cushions were vacuumed, rearranged. He opened the silverware drawer, then closed it. Nothing needed doing there. In the fridge, he counted eggs. 8. Enough for pancakes. He picked up Marlene's old ceramic butter dish, the one she bought at a roadside market near Savannah and insisted was the color of spring. It had a small chip on one edge now. He almost put it away. Then he didn't. The kitchen clock said 3:12 when he finally sat down. The silence stretched, familiar. Lily burst into the house with the ease of someone who didn't know what quiet meant yet. Thomas crouched to greet her, his knees slow but his hands sure. She launched herself at him, her breath smelling of road snacks. "Did you feed the ducks without me?" He smiled. "They said they'd wait." She disappeared down the hall a minute later, Ethan trailing after her with a weekend bag and his tired eyes. Thomas found himself watching his son's shoulders. They were shaped like his own now, slightly stooped, used to carrying things. Dinner was simple. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, a green salad no one touched. Lily sat between them, swinging her legs under the table. She chatted without needing replies. "I told Miss Clark my grandpa used to be a builder. She said that's cool. I said you still have your old boots and they're really muddy and she laughed." Thomas nodded. "They're in the garage," he said. "I know," Lily grinned. "They smell funny." He glanced at Ethan, who had his phone face down beside his plate. Then Lily turned toward him, holding a spoon like a microphone. "Grandpa," she said in a mock-serious voice, "do you still have that shirt with the little birds? The one that makes you look like a dork?" Thomas froze. The phrase landed too neatly. Chelsea had said something like that once. Years ago, outside the gym, when he'd worn that ridiculous bird print shirt on a dare. She'd laughed, loud enough for others to hear, and called him a walking bird bath, and then something about dorks. His stomach shifted. He blinked once. "Probably," he said evenly, reaching for the salt. "Haven't seen it in a while." Ethan didn't notice the pause. He was cutting Lily's potatoes smaller. After dinner, Lily settled with her coloring books on the living room rug. Ethan answered a work call outside. Thomas rinsed the plates slowly. The kitchen light buzzed overhead. In the window reflection, his own face looked slightly blurred, like the world had shifted a fraction out of place. Upstairs, the guest room door creaked as Lily climbed into bed. Her voice drifted down the hall. "Good night, Grandpa." He answered steady, but in the sink, one glass slipped from his hand and cracked in the basin. Not broken, just enough. After they left, the silence returned too quickly. Their voices, Ethan's deeper now, Lily's always chasing something invisible, had filled the corners of the house in a way that made Thomas forget what silence usually felt like. Now, with the car gone and the dishes washed, it crept back in with too much speed, too much ease, like something rehearsed. He stood at the base of the stairs longer than he needed to, hand on the rail, eyes on nothing. Then he climbed. In the bedroom, it was as if nothing had changed. The bed was neatly made, a shirt draped over the arm of the chair, the window slightly open, letting in the breath of late spring. He crossed to the dresser and opened the top drawer. Not quickly. No purpose yet. It was there. Folded awkwardly in the back, under an old scarf Marlene had once worn to a cousin's wedding. The bird print shirt. Pale green, soft from age, a pattern of swallows or starlings, he never knew which. The fabric didn't matter. What mattered was what had happened in it. He sat on the edge of the bed with it, not holding it to his chest, just across his knees, like a forgotten promise. His hands rested on top of it. They didn't move. Chelsea had said something sharp about it once. In the hallway, high school corridor, just loud enough. "Birds on a grown man? What are you, 12? It had been a joke, the kind that claws its way under your skin and stays. He never wore it again after that day. Marlene found it later and said she liked the color. She folded it and kept it, unaware, or maybe not. Lily's voice had used the same words, not cruelly, not even knowingly. But the echo had a weight he couldn't explain. He sat there until the window's light dimmed into that quiet, neutral gray. He didn't speak. No memory narrated itself. Nothing cinematic passed through his mind. Just the hum of the past, steady and uncomfortable. Eventually, he stood. He didn't refold the shirt, just set it on the chair. Then walked downstairs. The letter was still there, tucked into the stack of unsorted papers beside the landline no one used anymore. Not in an envelope. Not hidden. He had written it with too much care weeks ago, and then let it rest, as if waiting for the right moment to disown or validate it. He picked it up, didn't reread. The door groaned a little as he opened it. Outside, the air was just cool enough to remind him of old fall evenings with rakes and cider. He didn't bring a jacket. He walked down the driveway slowly, not to be dramatic, just because it felt like the right speed for what he was doing. At the mailbox, he didn't hesitate. Slid it in, let the flap fall shut. Then he stood there a second too long enough to notice the neighbor's porch light blinking, faulty as always, long enough to smell damp earth and hear the metallic groan of a gate 2 houses down. Then he turned and walked back. Nothing changed. The porch light above his door buzzed faintly. The living room still smelled like Lily's apple shampoo. The kitchen sink was dry. He didn't turn on the TV, didn't make tea, didn't check his phone. He sat down in the same chair he always used. The quiet was intact again, whole and unbroken. But something, somewhere, had shifted. The envelope was thicker than he expected. Pale cream. slightly textured, as if someone had taken the time to choose the paper. He recognized Dave's handwriting right away. Still the same slant, a bit too tight, the kind that suggested a person who never quite relaxed. He opened it in the kitchen. Didn't sit. Just stood over the sink like he might rinse the envelope out afterward. Inside was a letter and a photo. He read the first sentence without breathing. "Tom, I was so glad to hear from you." That was all it took to tighten his throat. Not the words, but the casual use of his name like it hadn't been 50 years. Dave wrote like he spoke. Plain, kind, without flourish. He mentioned the reunion, how small the planning group was, how the old gym still smelled faintly of varnish and popcorn, how Mrs. Conroy, the typing teacher, still lived near the school and claimed to remember everyone. Thomas half smiled. And then, "You might be surprised to hear Chelsea's on the committee, too. She showed up to the first meeting late, blamed traffic, but it was the same laugh I remember, half apology, half mischief." Thomas stopped reading. The kitchen clock ticked, loud now. He rubbed the edge of the letter between thumb and finger. Chelsea. The name in print didn't sting, not like it used to. It sat there, calmly. Chelsea. Not a ghost this time, just a fact on a page. He finished the letter standing up. Dave described a story Thomas didn't remember, Chelsea playing a Beatles song on the library piano, badly, but with such confidence the whole lunchroom applauded. "You were there," Dave wrote. "I remember you laughed." Thomas tried to picture it. The piano, the cafeteria light, but all that came was a smell, dust and erasers, the tang of ink from the mimeograph machine in the next room. He read the letter again, this time slower. Then a third time, sitting now, without the envelope, just the paper in his hand. The photo was of the reunion committee, 6 of them, shoulder to shoulder in the school hallway. Dave was in the middle, grinning. Next to him, a woman with silver-streaked hair and a familiar tilt of the head. Chelsea. She looked almost exactly how he imagined. Older, of course, but there was something untouched in her expression, like the years had passed through her instead of over her. Thomas set the photo down. The sunlight was slanting into the living room now. He moved there slowly, barefoot, carrying the letter. Sat in the chair Marlene always liked, the one with the corduroy armrest worn smooth on one side from her knitting. He read the letter again. This time, Chelsea's name didn't freeze him. Instead, it opened something. Not the shame, but before that. Something quieter. Music. He remembered his hands. Not his face, not his voice. His hands. Ink-stained from the school paper. The smell of the editor's room, always faintly like toner and cafeteria apples. He used to sit with his back to the lockers, copying out headlines while the other kids shouted down the hall. Chelsea had once walked past and said, "You look like you're writing ransom notes." She hadn't stopped walking, but he'd smiled. He hadn't thought of that in decades. Not the humiliation, the moment before it. That night, Thomas slept early. The house was warm but quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't press against him. He left the letter on the kitchen table, not stacked neatly, just there, with the corner of the photo sticking out. He dreamt, not of Chelsea's voice, or the pool, or the bird-print shirt. He dreamt of walking through the back hall of the high school, where the industrial arts classes used to be. He saw his old locker, number 217, and the chipped blue paint. He opened it, and it was full of folded newspapers. He picked one up. The ink smudged his fingers. There was a smell in the dream, too. Not fear, not regret. Glue. Someone had glued a photo to the front page, a group picture from the spring fair. He remembered the fair now, the dunk tank, the raffle. Chelsea had sold tickets. He hadn't gone near her. But she was in the picture, in the background, blurry, laughing. He woke up before dawn, didn't check the time, just lay there, eyes open. The house felt different. Still, but not empty. He went to the kitchen, picked up the letter again. Didn't read it this time, just folded it back and slid it into the envelope. Then opened the drawer where he kept Marlene's paperweights and pressed the letter beneath the blue glass, one shaped like a wave. The kitchen light hummed overhead. He poured himself a cup of water, sat at the table, and looked out the window. The backyard was still dark. The bird feeder swayed a little. Somewhere, a raccoon was probably watching. He thought about Chelsea's name again, then thought of the ink on his hands. Then he thought nothing at all, just sat, quietly, like someone waiting for a song to start. I didn't decide in the morning. It was somewhere between wiping the edge of the sink and folding the towel back into its shape. I turned and looked at the kitchen window. The tree across the street had bloomed early this year. I found the motel online, not the first one listed, but the third. The reviews mentioned quiet nights and a view of a field. I liked that. I clicked reserve without checking how far it was from the school. Then I got up and went to the bathroom. The shaving cream had stiffened at the nozzle. I ran it under hot water until it gave. The razor had 2 strokes left in it, maybe 3. I did it slowly, not out of ritual, just caution. The skin under my chin folded a little more than I remembered. The medicine cabinet still held Marlene's peppermint oil. I moved it to the side, then moved it back. Packing didn't take long. Underwear, socks, 2 shirts, one with a pocket I never used. I stood a while before taking the bird print shirt. It was already folded. I didn't smell it. Just laid it on top. The bag looked too light, so I added my book, the one I kept reading and forgetting. Downstairs, I unplugged the coffee maker. Not because I needed to, just habit. I left the sponge on the edge of the sink, slightly damp. The car was half full of dust. I wiped the dashboard with the sleeve of my coat. The old air freshener still hung from the mirror. Vanilla. I thought about taking it down, then didn't. The drive wasn't long, an hour and 20 maybe. The radio didn't pick up anything until I hit the edge of town. Some talk show, too loud, then silence again. I kept it off. At a rest stop, I watched a boy chase a plastic bag. His father watched the bag, not the boy. They both looked tired. I reached the motel before dark. The lobby was small, smelled faintly of chlorine. A woman handed me a key without looking up. Room 5. The key was cold, old-style brass. I liked the weight of it. Inside, the room had a muted carpet, beige walls, a bed with a cover that didn't belong to any season. I set the bag on the chair, not the bed. I opened the drawer beside the bed. A phone book, a Gideon Bible, a pen with no logo. I took none of it. I washed my face with the motel soap. It smelled different than home. Citrus and something sharp. I didn't dry my face all the way. For dinner, I walked to a diner a few blocks down. I ordered the daily special. The waitress wrote it without speaking. The ice in the water glass stuck to itself. Outside, the street lights buzzed faintly. I looked at the school from the corner, not at it, past it. Then I crossed back. In the room, I hung the shirt. It didn't wrinkle on the drive. I sat on the bed, shoes still on, and looked at the window. A parking lot, a tree, the shape of the moon caught in the reflection of someone else's brake lights. I didn't sleep right away, I didn't read, I just sat. Nothing stirred. I arrived early. The sky was still pale with the kind of morning that clings to silence. No one was around the front entrance except a maintenance man sweeping leaves near the gymnasium doors. He didn't look up, and I didn't stop. The door was unlocked, or maybe just not pulled all the way closed. I stepped inside and let it shut quietly behind me. The air smelled of old varnish, cafeteria grease, and time, the kind of smell that lives in memory longer than any photo. My shoes echoed lightly on the tile. I didn't rush. There was no map in my head, no destination, just a hallway I once knew, Locker doors still bore the same small dents and chips. I ran my fingers along one, absently counting until I found it. 74. Mine. Still stuck slightly if you pulled it too hard. I remembered that. I used to keep a folded timetable wedged in the top vent, scrawled notes from Dave, a photo of Marlene clipped to the inside wall, her in a red dress smiling off camera. I didn't try to open it, just leaned back against it for a moment. The metal was cold. There was a soft humming somewhere, barely a trace, maybe someone in the music room. I followed it, slow, like letting a song pull me forward. Each step felt like a memory, but not a sharp one. Just impressions. The squeak of gym shoes. A locker slammed. Someone yelling across the courtyard. I didn't need details. The ghosts here didn't demand that anymore. The music room door was open just a crack. I peeked in, not even sure why. A young woman, early 20s maybe, sat at the piano, practicing. Something classical. Her back was to me. I didn't interrupt. Just stood there and listened. The notes weren't perfect. She paused, repeated a passage, frowned. But she kept going. The room felt alive. I let the sound press against the edges of my ribs and then moved on, past the science wing, past the cafeteria. I looked in. New tables, but the windows still bled morning light onto the linoleum in long, soft beams. It was empty, quiet. That same gentle kind of quiet that used to accompany skipped breakfasts and awkward teenage silences. I didn't linger. It was only when I turned the corner by the old art room that I saw her. Chelsea. She didn't see me at first. She was standing near a corkboard, her back to me, reading some posted notice. She wore a soft gray coat and her hair was shorter than I remembered, less styled, more real. I almost turned back, but she turned before I could. We both paused. Thomas? I nodded. Chelsea. Her smile was slow, hesitant. Didn't expect to see anyone yet. They said things don't really start until afternoon. I came early, I said simply. Wanted to walk around, see what stayed the same. She looked down the hallway. A lot hasn't, which is strange, I guess. I thought it'd feel smaller, but it doesn't, just quieter. Yeah. We stood in the same patch of light for a moment, surrounded by lockers and silence. She didn't fill it, neither did I. I'm glad you came, she said eventually. I nodded. She opened her mouth like she might say something else, but didn't. Instead, she tucked a piece of hair behind her ear and looked past me. You look, well, she added. So do you. She smiled. It reached her eyes but stopped there. Funny how things come back. Some things, I said. She looked at me, softer then. Some things fade. Neither of us said what we were thinking. She glanced at the classroom behind her. I was looking for the art room, thought I might peek in. Not sure why. Just wanted to. Yeah, I said again. That makes sense. We stood for a breath longer. I'll see you later then? She asked. Sure. She walked past me, light on her feet. No perfume, just a slight scent of coffee and wool. I turned after she passed, but didn't watch her go. Just stood there for a minute, hands in my pockets, the hallway quiet again. I didn't feel regret. Just time, and space, and something else, like two people carrying different kinds of silence. I walked to the library next, sat in one of the corner chairs, the same dusty beige upholstery. I closed my eyes for a few minutes, not to sleep, just to sit. The light crept across the carpet slowly. Eventually, I got up and left. The parking lot behind the gymnasium was already half full when I arrived, not rushed. I sat in the car for a minute longer than I needed to, watching the slow movement of people toward the doors, their clothes slightly more polished than I remembered from high school, jackets, dresses, the occasional sparkle. I recognized none of them from behind. That seemed right. I wore the blue shirt. Not for anyone, just because it fit. Inside, the light had that particular school brightness, too white, slightly buzzing. Folding tables with name tags, old yearbooks, a photo booth no one was using. The committee had done their job well, with banners and soft music from a Bluetooth speaker tucked near the back. I could smell coffee and distant punch. Everything was as it should be, including the strange detachment. Thomas? The voice was familiar, though its owner had aged like all of us. Rounder face, thinner hair, warmer smile. Dave. He walked toward me with his arms slightly out, unsure if I was the hugging kind. I wasn't, but I let him anyway. His embrace was brief and firm, like a handshake of the shoulders. You came? Yeah. You look exactly the same, he said, then laughed before I could call it a lie. Older, obviously, but same vibe. Calm. Calm. That word again. We stood for a moment near the check-in table, watching others enter. A few people gave me polite nods, familiar but not certain. I didn't bother correcting anyone. We moved to a corner of the room where the music was lower and the chatter thinner. Dave talked, I listened. He filled the space with small updates, his kids, his back, something about remodeling their porch. I watched the room more than I responded. Chelsea was across the gym, laughing, not loudly, but enough to echo faintly. Her hair was longer than I remembered, and she wore something green, like the walls of our old music room. She didn't see me. That felt appropriate. I told Dave I needed coffee. He understood. The refreshment table had a bowl of sugar cubes, like someone wanted to add charm. I stirred my cup slowly, letting the sound of the spoon scrape the bottom once. Familiar weight. At some point, a woman approached me, didn't say her name at first. She looked at my tag, smiled. I think I was in your math class, she said. You were quiet. Still am. We exchanged no more than that, but she stood beside me for a minute longer before moving on. The night was full of those kinds of meetings, half-formed, soft-edged, gentle in their brevity. No one tried to rewrite anything. Later, Dave found me again. He handed me a small photo, grainy from a class trip, maybe the science museum. Found this in an old drawer, he said. Figured you might want it. I looked at it. I was there, in the background, half-turned. My mouth was open like I'd been about to say something, but you couldn't tell what. That made sense. As the crowd swelled, so did the noise. I stayed on the edge. No one needed anything from me. That was a gift. Around 9, I stepped out into the hallway. The lockers still lined the walls. I passed by mine again, touched the cool metal briefly, then continued walking. Outside, the air was cooler than before. The sky was clear, stars sharp. I walked past my car, down the sidewalk toward the football field. Empty now. Just a stretch of grass, lit faintly by a leftover floodlight. I sat on the lowest bleacher. No thoughts, just air, just night. Somewhere, far back, I heard laughter again. Then it faded. And I sat there a while longer, still,